My guest today is Stefano Puliatti. Stefano is a professor of urology at the University of Modena in Reggio Emilia. He's a robotic surgeon. He's a faculty member of SurgeQuest with my colleague Ruben de Groote, and he's former medical director at Orsi Academy in Belgium, where I met him in 2019. You're very welcome, Stefano.
Thank you, Prof. It's a pleasure for me.
You were a resident in Modena during a time when robotic surgery was expanding rapidly. Did you and the surgical leadership in Modena realize how pivotal robotics would be for the future of surgical practice?
Yes, we had the fortune to start robotics in 2007 in Modena. It was one of the first robotic platform in Italy, and the robotic leadership at the time was my mentor, Professor Giampaolo Bianchi, full professor in urology and the former director of the urological clinic here in Modena, and he saw very soon the potential of this new technology applied to the urological field, because the urological field is a very, very specific field of surgery. We have the pubic bone that obscure the anatomical view, and the robot is really able to avoid conflicts, to improve the visibility, and to improve the technical possibility to do, for example, an anastomosis. So really from the very first moment, he saw the potential, and we followed up with the implementation of the robotic surgery in our city and in urology.
So robotics was quite different, but I'm assuming that you started out your surgical experience learning laparoscopic and open procedures. So how did you learn laparoscopic and open procedures? Traditional Halstedian?
Yes, was a kind of a stadium model. Was typically still the standard way of training in a lot of centers in Europe. So I had the fortune to have a great surgeon teaching to me. So I was able to learn watching and then doing when I was allowed to do directly on the patient, directly in the OR. And this was the setting. So we saw the procedure done by a very, very good surgeon, and we were allowed step by step to do some part of the procedure done under the supervision of the trainer, directly on the patient, directly in the OR.
And did you attend subsidiary courses in laparoscopic, or were they run in the hospital, or they were apprenticeship type training as well?
Yeah, there were some courses run in Europe or in Italy, and I attended some courses in my first and second year of the residency school in laparoscopic and endourology around Europe and around Italy, mainly based on theoretical lessons and some live surgeries that we were allowed to follow, and some surgical skills using simulation, but not with a methodology, a theoretical methodology on the base of these courses.
Mm. So during your time as medical director at Orsi, looking back on it now, what are the key lessons that you learned about surgical training and learning skills?
Yeah, it was really a mind changing, because it was something really different what we did in Orsi Academy, because there were some very important key points, I think. First of all, there was Orsi Academy. Orsi Academy is a fantastic place in which we have a lot of simulation operative rooms. We have a lot of robotic platforms. We have everything to simulate a real operatory room without the risk of operating directly on a patient. This is a kind of wonderful place in which you have all the video games, all the possibilities that you want to learn. But I think this is not enough. The other key point that I found was a methodology. That was, I think, the thing that is missing in Europe, also nowadays, in the training setting. So we learn watching other surgeons and doing steps of the procedures directly on the patient. But without a methodology that is on the base. It means that if you have a very, very good surgeon that trains you, you can learn really well how to do surgery. But if you have a quality that is not enough in your trainership, probably you will be not a very, very good surgeon, because it is difficult to implement your skills if you don't have a very, very, very good surgeons teaching to you. What I found in Orsi Academy was a methodology. So the methodology is a kind of way that standardized the way we do training, and we have metrics, so we have rules to respect and are the same for all the trainees. And this means that it is possible to reach a very, very high level of skills at the end of the training. So it was not only about the training setting, and in that case was Orsi Academy, that is a very, very high level training setting, but was also about the methodology applied to the training that you do. And this methodology, those metrics, those rules that you have to respect, those errors that you have to avoid are really the key points that are probably, in my mind, able to democratize and standardize the level of the training and make the possibility for everybody to reach a certain level of performance at the end of the training.
So at the start of your time in Orsi, if you can think back to 2019, what did you make of proficiency-based progression training when you first encountered it?
At the beginning was very difficult because you were the leader, and I was a little bit difficult to understand your accent, but this was probably the first big problem. But after 3 months, I became really, I had a feeling with your accent, I had a feeling with you, and I had really a feeling with the methodology. And this was for me really something crazy, really something very good, because I saw a methodology that in the beginning seemed not so simple, but when you enter into it and you understand the methodology in depth, it becomes really simple and really straightforward. And it was really simple for me to understand how to apply the methodology in the different training models, and to really understand quickly that if you are able to focus the errors and the critical errors and to avoid the errors and the critical errors, then your performance becomes straightforward, becomes faster, becomes more, I don't know if it is possible to say like this, but it is good looking. So you can see that there is a flow that is more fast, more beauty to see, and at the end the results represents this beauty, and you have an improvement in the results, and at the end it is really fast to reach a proficiency level, so a very, very high level of performance. So to make a long story short, at the beginning seems complicated, the methodology, but it's not. is simple, is easy to apply on different tasks, and the results are really fast to be recognized at the end of the training performance.
So 5 to 6 years later, okay, you were working with robotics in Orsi Academy. So 5 to 6 years later, what do you make of PBP now?
Now it is a guidance, and it is a must-to-have. I have the fortune that all the robotic groups here in Modena was allowed to have a 1-year fellowship in Orsi Academy, and they were all trained accordingly to the PBP methodology. So also when we start here in the OR to do part of the procedures, when they come back from the fellowship and they start to do part of the procedure, it is accordingly to the PBP methodology. And only who has a benchmark proficiency already demonstrated in the anastomosis task and in the other task of the procedure, we know that the robot-assisted radical prostatectomy is probably one of the first robotic procedures that was metricized with the PBP methodology. And so we have all the steps with the metrics, and we follow this methodology and those rules in the OR. This makes the things really easier for the trainer and for the trainees, because it is more smooth, the learning curve on the patient, and without or with really less risks. So it is a win-to-win for the surgeons, for the school, and also for the patients.
Yeah, I mean, I think Modena have had a fabulous engagement with the proficiency-based progression methodology, and I think it bodes very well for the future in terms of the development of the department and for the new professor when they come in. So what for you are the essential features of the proficiency-based progression methodology that make it effective?
I think there are 3 points that makes PBP methodology a winning methodology. The first point are the metrics. The metrics are the rules, is the receipt that you have to follow to have good results at the end of the training. More than that are errors and critical errors that you have to avoid. So when you focus the errors and the critical errors that you have to avoid, it's really more simple to do a good procedure. The second point is the deliberate practice, because the deliberate practice for me is key. We did a study when we were in Orsi also with Luca Sarchi and Pietro Piazza and other Rui Farina, other colleagues, in which we did a telementoring. The telementoring with PBP-based was really successful. Why was that? Because we were able to speak a really direct language based on the metrics. And this is the deliberate practice. So you give feedbacks that are based on the metrics with a clear language that is already written on the metrics. And this makes the feedback really direct, really understandable for the trainee, and deliverable also in a telementoring setting. And this is something different in comparison to the Alstedian model, because in the Alstedian model you use a language that is your own language. So it is different if I do the training, if you do the training, or if another person does the training. With the metrics, you have the same language for everybody, and you can give really a direct feedback to the trainee that is able really to understand in a very, very short period of time what is your message and how to fix the problem. The third point that I think is key in the PBP methodology is the proficiency benchmark, because we have a really high level that the trainee has to reach, because it's the mean level of experienced surgeons, very, very good surgeons, that did the same task. So at the beginning, when you see it, you say, okay, but it is impossible that I reach the same level of these fantastic surgeons doing that task. And it is impossible that I reach that level in 1 day, 9 hours, or 1 day and a half. But with the metrics, it is possible to reach this proficiency benchmark really fast. And at the end, you reach this kind of technical skills in the lab, not directly on the patient. And this is something that allows you then, when you go on the patient, to have the confidence and the safety to operate directly on the patient with a very, very high level of technical skills. And this makes the trainee more confident, but also the trainer and the responsible of the surgical more confident that we will not have damages on the patient.
Yeah, I think one of the lessons that we learned from your studies and from Ruben's studies is that you also have to train the trainers how to deliver the deliberate practice. Because I remember walking around the skills lab and watching the different individuals deliver deliberate practice. And some of them are really good at it, and some of them are really shy, and some of them they didn't understand what proximate feedback was. So it was, I think it was a huge, your time in Orsi, I think it was a huge developmental phase for proficiency-based progression, where we learned a lot. One of the things you talked about, practicing in the skills lab. I mean, do you think that the simulation models for training skills or robotic surgical skills, do you think they by default have to be expensive?
We tried to find something that was less expensive, because there is a kind of market also around the training models. There are some really expensive virtual reality simulators. There are plastic models that are really expensive. What we tried to do was to find a model that is available worldwide. It is not expensive, and we found it using a chicken model. And the chicken model, in my opinion, that was already inquired and studied as a training model, but without a training methodology. It was not PBP based before.
Yeah.
To apply the PBP methodology to acquire the technical skills using an inexpensive model like the chicken model, I think was a very, very good idea. Because the chicken model is really available worldwide. We use the chicken that you can find in the supermarket. It's the same chicken that you buy to eat at lunch or at dinner. So instead of using it for feeding, we use it for training. That I think is a very, very important thing to do. And the chicken model has some advantages. It's a biological model, so has some elasticities, some characteristics of the tissue that really are similar to the human tissue, and it is more or less inexpensive. The most difficult part, in my opinion, was to find, using a single model, the different tasks that were able to reproduce the basic skills that you have to acquire to do then a very, very important surgery like a radical prostatectomy or some gynecological or general surgical procedures. And we found three main basic skills: suturing and knotting, dissection, and coagulation tasks. that are really important to acquire. And using the chicken model, we were able to find different exercises that were able to train these three skills that are the elementary skills that you have to acquire before going into the UR. So I think it is inexpensive, available worldwide, really similar to the human tissue training model. It is really important to have it and to use it. Obviously, the biological tissue and the biological animal probably in the future will be not allowed. Now we have really technological advanced 3D printers. Probably this will be the way in the future to try to really find not biological tissues that are able to reproduce the biomechanical information and the biomechanical characteristics and features of the human tissue.
Mm. Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, a lot of the models that I see are very expensive, and I'm not too sure they're very functional, particularly for the suturing and knot tying. I've yet to see. I'm a huge fan of physics-based virtual reality simulation, but I have yet to see a simulator that accurately or realistically simulates needle, thread, tissue dynamics, particularly when tying a knot. I mean, Dwight Maglin and I were talking some time ago, and he agrees that we don't seem to be at that point yet. But he thinks that AI may help in the development of that, but that could be years off. So, was the development and validation of the vesicourethral anastomosis chicken model in Orsi, was it an important milestone for you? You've got this chicken, you've got this inexpensive chicken model for the vesicourethral anastomosis. You've got a training methodology, and you've combined these. So, was it an important milestone for you?
Yeah, it was super important. It was for me really a very important school because with this training exercise, we were able to apply the methodology on the basic skills setting in robotic surgery. This was not done before we did it. So it was a first time, and it was first of all, personally, a very, very nice moment because we cooperated with your guidance, with other colleagues, working on the metrics, working together, thinking about the errors, the mistakes, the critical errors that you can commit when you do this kind of training exercise, and to apply the methodology on a model. And this model is very nice because you have a stomach and the cloaca of a chicken that really simulates the vesicle and the bladder and the urethra. So the vesico-urethral anastomosis, it is really similar to the stomach cloacal anastomosis that you do in the chicken. So it was a combination of things, and I think about that as one of the most important research I have done so far, and one of the most important experience that I have done. It taught me a lot about the application of a methodology, about scientific research, but also it is something that I still using day by day in terms of really deliberate practice and information that as a trainer now I give to the trainees and to the fellows, and it was really useful for me.
Yeah, yeah. I remember the time. I mean, I thought it was a very powerful vehicle for teaching you guys about the methodology, but also how the methodology applies to real surgical procedures. And it was probably one of the most productive times, for me and probably for Orsi in terms of, the training models that we developed, the publications that we had, and so on. And it was fun doing it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, in relation to that and the papers, you were the first or the joint first author in the first systematic review and meta-analysis of all prospective randomized and blinded studies that had used a proficiency-based progression methodology to train one arm and compared it to the gold standard, the conventional Halstedian approach to training robotic surgical skills, or skills in general. Systematic review covered all of them. So, what were the main findings of that study?
Yeah. I remember it as another fantastic period. It was COVID period, and we had it was really how to learn how to do science. Again, under your guidance, we were, I think, in uh, Zoom calls every night, thinking together, and one idea came because yeah, we were applied at the moment the PBP methodology in robotic surgery, and in robotic surgery was more or less the first time that the methodology was applied, but the methodology was around from 20 years at the time, if I'm not mistaken, and it was already used in the medical field. So there were a lot of studies in which PBP methodology was applied in training, for example, in anesthesia, in orthopedics, in a lot of other specialties. So what we thought was to analyze the results that PBP already demonstrated in other medical fields in comparison to the standard way of training, because there were a lot of data already on the table, and at the time nobody analyzed all those data together. So the idea to do a meta-analysis and a systematic review on those data was, I think, a very, very good idea. And the results were really something crazy, because we expected something good in the comparison between the PBP methodology and the standard training, but not with this magnitude of difference. And we found that with the PBP methodology applied in the medical field, the trainees who completed the training, the PBP trainees, in comparison to the traditional the trainees that were following the traditional way of training, were faster. So there was a 50% difference in terms of velocity in doing the exercise. But we know that to be fast is not the same to be high quality surgeons. But it was something. So the trainees were faster in completing the task. Completed more procedural steps, 47% of difference, and more than that, and it was really the thing that was for us the most important, they committed, the PBP trainees committed 60% less operative errors. It means that at the end, PBP allows the trainees following this methodology to be faster, to complete more steps, and to do less errors. So you have, we had already at the time, before starting really to apply it in robotic surgery, the demonstration that the PBP methodology was working really well in the medical field and was really improving the results. And the data were all data coming for prospective randomized trials. So it was not, it was probably all papers were level 1A of evidence. So were really robust data that we cannot ignore.
Yeah, and I mean, what I was impressed was, okay, it was a simple idea, but it was a fabulous idea. And I remember how well we actually worked and how strictly we adhered to the science, including the evaluation of the quality of the papers. And it forced me to rethink about, I knew the steps of the procedure, the time it takes to do a procedure, those are measures of process, and we know the process on its own will not get you quality. And what that study forced me to realize was that the errors were the indicator of the quality of that process. And so that's how they actually fit together. So, I mean, it was fabulous. And I remember how well we worked together at the time. Now, I spent 5 years in the US working in surgery and cardiology. And Frank Lewis was the He was the chief executive or executive director of the American Board of Surgery. The American Board of Surgery, they run American surgical credentialing and so on. Frank was an old-fashioned trauma surgeon. He was very smart. I liked him a lot. We would get on really well. He liked the proficiency-based progression approach. He says, Tony, I like that, but number one, you're never going to get people. You talked about it earlier, setting the benchmark on the main performance of good surgeons. He says, you're not going to get everybody, all of the trainees, to the proficiency benchmark. He said that it's really that the benchmark's too high. So one, benchmark is too high, and two, that we were never going to get everybody to proficiency. Now we're 20 years, we're more than 20 years on. Was he right?
I think that the PBP methodology can be applied in all the fields. And I think that it is a methodology that really, as I said, is able to democratize the quality of the performance at the end. If you think about the proficiency benchmark and you look at it before you start training, you say it is impossible. So, or almost impossible, because you think that the benchmark is too high. The benchmark is the same quality level of a surgeon that has done thousands of that kind of procedure. But then you realize that if you understand the rules that are on the base of the surgery, on the base of the acquisition of the technical skills, then it is possible to focus the errors, the critical errors, and then it is possible to avoid that. Obviously, you have to train. Obviously, you have to fatigue. You have to put effort in the training. It is effort for the trainees. It is effort for the trainer. But it is a process that makes the trainees really, in an easy way, up to a proficiency level. And so the benchmark, in my opinion, the criticism that were moved at the time are understandable, are logics, probably. But if you try to do that accordingly to the PBP, you understand really fast that are not true. Because it is possible to reach that benchmark, it is possible to reach it quickly and probably faster than with a traditional training methodology.
Probably or definitely?
I think the data are there. So,
Yeah.
you know that my English is an Italian English, so you have to take it a little bit with, you have to understand me, but the data are there. So the probability, probably the era of the probability is finished. Now we have data that cannot be ignored. Again, are all data coming from prospective randomized trials. So it is level 1A of evidence. And if we don't trust level 1A of evidence, probably we have to trash more than half of the medical literature.
Yeah. Yeah, I think your papers are some of the most important in the proficiency-based progression methodology history. Because, I mean, the question that Frank asked me, I mean, I like Frank, still have enormous respect for him. And he asked good questions, and you unambiguously answered the question, okay, can we train everybody to proficiency? Yes, we can.
Yes.
And in comparison to the conventional training, it takes about 1/3 the time to get everybody to proficiency, and only 58% over 3 days got to proficiency with the conventional approach to training. I would say that's definitely and unambiguously answered those two questions.
Yes.
The other thing,
yeah, sorry.
go ahead. No, go ahead.
When we started this trial in Orsi Academy, and we had as trainees naive medical students in the trial that I led, the idea was really difficult to have everybody reaching the proficiency benchmark. And with the PBP models, we were able to do that. So probably if you are able to do that with medical students, it will be really more easier, really more easy if you have more prepared people.
Yeah. The other issue that surgical leaders and industry leaders who actually fund a lot of the courses, what they say to me is, Tony, yes, we like the idea of proficiency-based progression, but it's too expensive. It's more expensive than the conventional approach to training the way that we do it. Is that correct?
This was the other really important point and really important criticism that we tried to answer together in my period in Orsi. Was also another very nice study, and it taught me another approach, because other than the medical and surgical field that daily I have to inquire, there was the economical field applied to training that is not less important than the technical field, because you can have the best technical methodology, the best model, but if it is too expensive, it is not applicable in the daily life. And what we found again was a kind of surprise, because yes, if you look at that before starting to analyze it in depth, it seems that the PBP is more expensive. Why? Because you have the cost of the metrics. Obviously, you have to develop the metrics, and you need a team of experienced surgeons. You need behavioral scientist, someone that really knows how to do science, how to do statistics, and you have to put this team together. Should be a team that cooperates really well, because otherwise you can have issues in the developing of the metrics and the application of the methodology on a training task. And it is effort, and it is economically costly at the beginning. But then what we showed is that using the PBP methodology, you have everybody reaching the benchmark. So you have a 100% of success in having people reaching a certain level, a very high level of performance, and you are faster. So the same task, to reach the proficiency benchmark in the same task with the traditional model, we in the suturing and knotting task using the chicken model, it was 3.5 days to have the 58% of the participants in the traditional model reaching the proficiency benchmark. And using a full PBP methodology, we were able to have the same results for the PBP trainees in 9 hours. It means that you have 2.5 days of difference in terms of time spent in the training lab, and the training lab is really costly. This was the magnitude of difference in terms of time. And as in life, time means money. So if you are able to spare time in the lab, you spare money. So the money that you invest to produce the metrics, if you have a large scale of people that will be trained using that methodology, at the end becomes saving of money. And what we found is that the point of equivalence is 25 trainees. So if you train less than 25 trainees, we used as a model the suturing and knot tying chicken model. So if you think about that model, so to learn how to do suturing and knotting using the PBP methodology, it is more costly if you train less than 25 people in comparison to the traditional model. But when you arrive at 25 people, you start to spare money. And you have to think that a training center as Orsi Academy or other important training centers normally train thousands of trainees per year. So at the end, you have you are able to save billions. And we found in our study that it was not statistically significant, But if you think about a company, a big company that delivers training, at the end of the days, to spare billions per year in deliver the training for their devices or for their for the surgical skills acquisition, yes, it is not probably statistically significant in the study that we ran, but it is economically significant for companies. And if we think about the training that can be used in the European community, it will be really prepare better surgeons with less economically expenses.
Yeah. I was, to be honest, I was surprised at the cost equivalence point, because I knew that question needed to be quantitatively answered, and I just assumed it would be 100 or 200 or something. But the 25 for the cost equivalence was a surprise to me. And I remember we modeled, using your results, we modeled, okay, what's the cost equivalence point for the development of the metrics and training using PBP for prostatectomy. And the metrics for that procedure were much more expensive. They ran into the hundreds of thousands. And I think the cost equivalence point was about 45. So, I mean, I think the data that you published were very powerful, and the BJUI published it as an open article, so I think they must have thought it was important too. So, does the dilution of the PBP methodology, does it impact on training outcomes? I mean, the PBP methodology is fairly strict in what it prescribes. You know, you're supposed to reach the proficiency benchmark. Well, you're supposed to do the online learning. You're supposed to demonstrate the proficiency benchmark in the online learning. You're supposed to pass the benchmark before you get to the skills lab and so on. What happens if you dilute the methodology, even just a little?
Yeah. If you dilute the methodology, then the methodology becomes less powerful and
Yeah.
less efficient. So there is honestly no reason to dilute it, but it was a study that we did to understand if we needed all the parts that you cited already of the PBP methodology, or there were some parts that were not useful or not important. The answer was no. We have really to use the PBP methodology, the full PBP methodology. If we dilute it, for example, instead of delivering the e-learning theoretical preparation with a benchmark at the end, if we take out the benchmark, we already lose efficiency in the methodology. What it means? It means that then we need more time to have people reaching the proficiency benchmark at the end of the training, and it means that it is less efficient and more expensive. Imagine to deliver the theoretical information about the methodology, the PBP methodology applied to that technical training skill in the lab and not online. It is an inefficient way to do that because you use time in the lab, so you have to rent a lab. You are probably less efficient in the communication of the information, and also you don't know really if people are focused on the theoretical information that you are giving to them. They cannot review it online. You can, as a trainee, you can review what you have already watched. You have a benchmark that you have to pass at the end. You don't need a training facility to do that. So it is really inexpensive, it is efficient, and there is no reasons to not use this setting. So what we found it is that the methodology should be used in the more completed form as possible. If you dilute, if you remove some part of the methodology, then it becomes less efficient. In the background, we had also a comparison with the traditional way of training, and we saw that it was by far the less efficient way to deliver the training. Yes, the PBP methodology, also if diluted, is better than the traditional training. But if we use the PBP methodology, why not use it in the complete form?
Yeah, I remember discussing the results with Yaro Mascheroni, who was working in cardiology, and I was telling him, I've shown him the data, and it took 14% longer to get to proficiency if you just removed the benchmark for the online didactics. I said, well, it wasn't statistically significant. He said, yeah, it might have been significant for you. He said, but if you're a company like Medtronic, and 14% of 5 to 750 million a year is what they spend on education and training. It doesn't have to be statistically significant for you. That's a huge amount of money, and that was an important point for me. So proficiency-based progression methodology is, in your experience, a very powerful methodology for training robotic surgical skills and probably surgical skills. Does PBP have a role to play outside robotic skills and surgical training? Do other disciplines, will they accrue a benefit from using it?
Yes, I think it is a methodology that can be applied in all the different surgical, medical, and also non-medical disciplines. There are already the data demonstrating the capability of this methodology of implement the way to do training. To be honest, I was really happy that we developed together the basic surgical skills, because that basic surgical skills using an inexpensive model as the chicken model are valid and are important not only for urology, are really important for all the robotic surgical disciplines. Because also if you are a gynecologist, also if you are a general surgeon, also if you are a cardiac surgeon using robotics, it is really important to acquire the suturing and knotting, the coagulation, the dissection. So are really training exercises that are valid for all the surgical disciplines. And this is, in my opinion, is a very, very nice thing that we developed and we did. But other than the technical skills, then you have really to metricize all the single procedures. This is obviously an effort that the different surgical disciplines have to do. They have to find surgeons that are really able to create and to apply the methodology on the different surgical procedures, but for sure the methodology can be used for all the surgical disciplines. This will be a little bit a long pathway, because obviously the procedures that we have to metricize are a lot. But in my opinion, when we will have the metrics for the most important, the most common procedures, at that moment we will have already a decreasing in the errors that can be done and in the learning curve that is for the most common procedures, and it will be an implementation of the results both for surgeons and for patients in the different surgical disciplines.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, a lot of clinicians think that we have to develop the metrics for every procedure. Not initially. What we need is index procedures, that teach the important skills that are benchmarked and so on. And I think that's going to take quite some effort. What I've said before, what probably is required with the level of evidence of PBP and how effective it is, what's probably required is an effort, something similar to the genome, where we metricize the index procedures for the different surgical disciplines, for the different procedure-based disciplines, and so on. I give keynote in Melbourne a few years ago, and somebody said to me, Tony, if you've got all this evidence, how come PBP is not wider practice? And I said to them, I think that's because of a failure of leadership. And genuinely, that's my view. But I think that you're one of the younger new generations that will come along, that are here, not come along, who will lead the application and implementation of a proficiency-based progression approach to training. Stefano, as always, it's been a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof, for your guidance in all those years. Thank you for your support. Thank you for this interview, and I hope to see you soon in person.